So that's the other thing is you toss in these other layers of how everything evolves, and who knows what it's going to look like when all of our kids, end up hitting that age as well, which is going to be another, big question mark.
I can invest all the entrepreneurial learnings that I've had from all these courses to work in a smaller company where I will be able to wear more hats and I'm not pigeonholed into just one function.
Whether you're looking to find a new job, get promoted, or earn on the side, today's guest is your guy. Today, we welcome engineer and entrepreneur Varun Negandhi. He is a partner at EngSim, an automotive consulting company, and the founder of Beyond Grad, where he helps immigrants boost their income. Welcome, Varun.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
We are glad to have you. Now, you're what we call a triple threat in that you help across three core areas. May have stolen that from, the Beyoncés of the world who could sing, dance, write songs, everything. But in this case, it's you. That's ultimately you help people find new jobs, you help people getting promotions, and you help them earning on the side. So I'm really intrigued to learn a little bit about how you came to your current path and ultimately starting Beyond Grad. So if you wouldn't mind diving into that first with us, that'd be great.
Awesome. So yeah, you said it right. I am trying to help people in three core areas. And that's because that's where I have seen the most benefit in my life. I am in my dream job. I've been able to get to a position where I love what I do, have a lot of say in how the company proceeds further. And then I am doing Beyond Grad, which is a side business. So all three areas kind of are from my experience and from my vantage point, where I'm trying to close the gap for other people who are like me. And the story of Beyond Grad is essentially married to my marriage. So what I mean by that is in 2014, I was 4 years into my US living and US immigrant experience. I got married to my girlfriend of 5 years and we moved into our own apartment. So I went from living with roommates to paying rent for the entire apartment, paying all the utilities, paying everything. And it was a shocker for me. It just jolted me. And it's like, what you thought was the American dream, which is get a job and do the job, is not going to kind of take you when you have a family to what the American dream should be. So that was like my face getting dipped into cold water, essentially. And I came out of it thinking, okay, there is a different game here at my workplace, which is not similar to the game that I played in my schooling, my undergrad, my master's program, where the path was really simple. It's like Google Maps. You put in your destination, which is your A grade, and you get all the directions along the way that you need to ace this test, you need to fulfill this assignment. And it was easy to navigate that. Whereas when you come to the workplace, there is no Google Maps, there is no map. You'll be glad if you're given a compass and
might be pointed the wrong direction.
Well, probably. And you'll be like, all right, just go ahead, find your way. And I was lucky to fall into some of my mentors who were teaching online, namely Ramit Sethi, Seth Godin, and likes. We're talking about the mental aspects. We're talking about what it means to be a top performer, talking about entrepreneurship. And again, I was lucky to get into that world and start seeing that there's a different game being played around me. And that's the gap that I'm trying to close with other immigrants like me who are coming from a vastly different cultural background. Even though they have all the great skills, navigating the workplace is much more difficult and different. And that's the gap I'm trying to close.
Awesome. I love it. Your focus areas you mentioned around immigrant experience, admitting for me, not a whole lot of exposure to that. I'm curious if you could describe a little bit more of like, what does that look like? And what are some of the unique challenges that are faced in that situation?
It was unique from the standpoint of going from a big bustling city to suburban Michigan. And before, and I've said this story in a different conversation as well, where if in Mumbai I had to go get a haircut, I had hair back then. I could walk I could take a rickshaw, I could take a bus, I could take a train, I could take a cab, I could drive my own car. I came to Michigan thinking all entire US is essentially New York and San Francisco. And Michigan suburbs, I had to actually haul for a ride with a senior of mine to get that same haircut. And I'm like, what's happening here? This is twisted. This is completely opposite to what I thought it would be. So it was an interesting experience coming from Mumbai to suburban Michigan to do my master's in automotive engineering. But I've grown to love it, grown to love the pace of life, grown to love the beautiful nature around me. And it's been great so far. I'm 13 years into my immigrant experience.
I have a question for you. From immigrant perspective, especially now when you look at the big tech companies and the CEO, there's so many CEOs that are immigrants, especially Indian immigrants. Does that play a role in how you perceive the potential is? Or is that something you don't even, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's just there, but you don't pay attention to it?
No, it's huge. It is huge. I think those are examples that goes to show that you can get to that point if you want to. You have to figure out that path. Maybe you have to listen to what they are saying. But being from a more traditional automotive industry, you don't see a lot of people break like a glass ceiling. There is at least the mentors that I had in the area felt that there is a glass ceiling in traditional companies for immigrants. But tech always kind of leads the US industry, US landscape. So I'm glad to see examples there, which kind of empower other examples in other industries throughout the US and even the world sometimes. So that is awesome to see them do that.
Yeah, you can only think that with electric cars, car manufacturers are becoming tech and AI companies too. So it's kind of blending all together.
Absolutely. It's a disruptive time in the industry right now, and you will either make it or you will be broken.
It's interesting, as you were mentioning that experience before of coming over, and then, especially the location that you moved to, because Detroit, or Michigan in general, but Detroit being the largest city, it was built around cars, which means, unlike San Francisco and New York, it wasn't built around needing a transportation before, or Mumbai or anything else like that. But it does sound like, I remember seeing the image that you shared on LinkedIn of some of the trains in Mumbai, and it sounds like, though, maybe you're a little safer these days, right? Question why?
Less adventurous.
Yeah, less adventurous.
Yeah, it's a unique experience. I love the city. Every time I go back, I feel like I should be there. Every time I come back here, I feel like, okay, this is home. So it is, I think, like, to all immigrants, it's like we are in both worlds right now.
Yeah.
And I will share one tough part about it, which is not related to our careers, is because the three generation of the middle generation that moves somewhere else, life is tough. What I mean by that is, I'm here, my parents are there, so I'm not being able to live the life that I want to live with my parents, enjoy the festivals that we have, etc. My kids are not able to learn from their grandparents. Yeah. Grandparents are not able to see their grandkids. So the first generation that moves here, the one generation up and the one generation down, have a little bit of a hard time, but that's the sacrifice you make to think that you are providing a better future for the generations that are to come.
That makes a lot of sense. There was Art and I sometimes get into it, and we've had conversations before about what can also happen, which is maybe another topic, but it's interesting how sometimes, like, immigrants and the work ethic and the things that they'll come with when, immigrating to any new country is, usually just so hard work. They're going to make things work. They came here for this change. But what's interesting is then trying to also have the kids in the next generation. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, because now instead, sometimes it's just the parents had. Just like anybody can experience, I guess, whether immigrant or not. But, we've talked about that too. And like, how do you kind of carry on that mentality in some ways when it's a whole different world that you're moving the family into?
I have thought about that. And it is something that I I worry about. Having said that, it's a double-edged sword. You came here to have them have softer expectations, have them have the flexibility to figure out what they like to do.
Yeah.
Whereas I didn't have that luxury. I was still better than my parents. My parents worked their ass off to get to where I am. Yeah. I'm trying to do the same, but I am then also hoping that it doesn't lead to a softer time or a softer expectation. So I worry about that too. I have no answer for it right now. And I am actually open to learning more about it. If you guys have any advice.
I think it's a struggle we're all going through. I always talking about like you want them to have the flexibility and the options, and they're going to have a lot more options than we did. But how do you instill on them the mindset that it's not entitled? Like they still have to put an effort into it, and it's not going to come easy. My son is 5, my daughter's 3, so I have a little more time to figure this out. But it is definitely a top of mind concern.
But I think too, when you look at generationally, you start to see a really interesting thing that happens anyway, because we may be thinking about it in the mentality of what we're saying now, but then the other variable that gets tossed on it is, well, okay, look at generations now coming out of school. Well, and partially because of the pandemic, people are looking more at like, how do I just live a life that's not just about hustle culture and is about how do I actually just live a really well-balanced life? And for many, that's like, hey, I don't need a huge paycheck. I want the ability to be remote, and this is what that looks like. So that's the other thing is you toss in these other layers of how, everything evolves, and who knows what it's going to look like when all of our kids, end up hitting that age as well, which is going to be another, big.
I have a funny story. My son just turned 5, and we had a little family birthday. He has 2 cousins, my wife's niece. They're 9 and 11. So they come over and they ask me a question. I'm like, oh, let me go show you. They walk into this room and they see the cameras. Their eyes lit up. What is that? I'm like, oh, it's the podcast we've been doing. You have a YouTube channel? I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's our dream. That is all we want to do, is to be a YouTuber and have fun making content. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow. When I was 10, that's something I would never thought about. But it's this generation, like that's like such an important thing for them.
Yeah, and I think we are trying to capture that, right?
Yeah.
Capture that. And I see my oldest is 6. She takes her phone and she's vlogging at 6. And my wife and I are like mouth wide open thinking, how does she know to do this? I mean, and so articulate, and she's trying to explain her life as they do in vlogs. I will try to teach them one thing, which is the probability of success. I think that's not being talked about often, at least in the circles where I am, is that if you are an engineer, you can be 1 in a million engineer and have a great life. You cannot be a 1 in a million singer or a 1 in a million dancer or a 1 in a million creator to have the same level of success. You probably need to be 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 1,000 even. So if they want to choose a path that has a lower probability of success, they might have to get comfortable with the fact that they will have to work more to be in the top 10,000, to be in the top 1,000.
Yeah. It's a great point. I forget the exact stats, but I was sharing something the other day in a post on LinkedIn too about how just podcasts in general, like most people don't make it past, was it 3? So at this point, I'm like, yes, and then those who make it past 20, I think then the likelihood that they're going to continue on for a long time. And, I'd say success, who really knows exactly what that means as well. But it is the idea that oftentimes too, I think this is what happens for a lot of people when it comes to those probabilities is, look, you're an example. I remember meeting you, coming across your content long ago when I was looking at doing, something similar space. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Let's see what he's doing. And we both, Remy, both had that connection there. And you stuck with it over time, as have I, even though we're not like at this point, swimming like Scrooge McDuck and money related to any of this. We've helped people, which is one of the things we wanted to do. And we are slowly continuing to build on it. And we didn't give up. And I think that's the other thing with the probabilities that's super important, because that is how you can, shift those odds a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's all about
The
consistency.
path, yeah, the path to time freedom is through time prison. That's my post today.
I love
It sucks. We have to embrace that suck for a while.
It's so true. One of the things, though, going back to your probabilities too, that I remember Artin saying at some point, hopefully I don't open up his wound here, but he's like, he would have loved to play professional basketball. But as he always said, that the height was not to his advantage. Now, I've got more height, still not enough for basketball, and I just can't play worth anything. He could also vouch for that. But but the idea is he's like, gosh, that piece. So there's also certain things that you got to figure out what you're working with when it comes to your own abilities and such. But I do have a question related though to all of this. You said before that you have your dream job, which is not something that a lot of people can say. So love to hear a little bit more about, like, for you, what does a successful career look like? And I know you mentioned also the idea of this lifestyle first mindset, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so I was in that trigger point after my marriage as to figuring out, okay, which game should I be playing? Because for any engineer, for any professional for that matter, there are essentially 4 routes you can take. You can take the C-suite route, you can take the technical manager route, you can take the technical specialist route, where you're just a specialist and individual contributor. And then finally, you can take the entrepreneurship route. So again, with the being blessed for having mentors who kind of shared frameworks to me, I was able to take each one of those people out for lunch. So I took the CTO of a Fortune 500 company out for lunch, asked him about his life, what his travel life was like, what his family life was like, what were his day-to-day responsibilities, what he liked about them, what he didn't like about them. Then I was able to take a technical manager out for lunch, and I asked her how her life was. So I genuinely took like 12 or 15 people in across these different buckets to understand, okay, which path appealed to me more. And the paths to entrepreneurship was what appealed to me the most. And I knew that seeing my parents be entrepreneurs, that my risk propensity is only going to get lower as I grow up. So I needed to go into that first because I could always come back to having a corporate job. Now, the thing is, I was on an H-1B. So this is where the whole immigration aspect comes into it, where it is not straightforward to me to show up on American land and start a business of my own. It's not straightforward. There are many things involved. I don't know how deep we want to go into that, but on a H-1B visa, which is a specialty occupation visa, you're not allowed to start a business, technically. There are some workarounds, but they are not easy to do. So then I was like, okay, what can I do about this? I was already working in a small company. I saw the opportunity to be an entrepreneur within that company. I couldn't start anything of my own, but I can invest all the entrepreneurial learnings that I've had from all these courses to work in a smaller company where I will be able to wear more hats. I will be able to have more say, and I'm not pigeonholed into just one function. So that's why it became my dream job. I kind of had to create it out of having this constraint of not being able to start anything of my own.
Yeah.
So I started to add marketing responsibilities, sales responsibilities, while spending 80% of my time doing engineering work.
That's awesome. And I think what you just said there about needing to create it, I think that's probably those who find themselves in what they call their dream job. That's probably more what happened, because, when you get to that point, especially as a top performer, and you're able to start cherry picking to a degree of, I like doing this stuff, I don't like doing this stuff. And whether that means then you have a team who handles some of those things you may not like, or whether or not you literally find yourself moving over more to a role that invites a lot more of what you like. So that's awesome. Arden, I don't know if you had anything to add, but otherwise, go ahead.
No, I think it's great. I regularly talk about that whole entrepreneurship route, of what a great route it is to test yourself to see if you're even up for this. Is this something you actually like to do before taking a bigger leap and then regretting it? So great story.
Yeah, and I think it is necessary for all leaders to do that. some leaders do that without even putting a name to it, because they understand their customer, who is their manager or the business unit that their business unit is working with. They understand the end customer of the company. So they know the hopes, fears, and dreams. And now they are trying to create solutions for them to help solve their pain points or help them achieve their dreams. So leaders are already doing that. I didn't know anything about it. I was just able to kind of look at this lens that I had learned and see, okay, wow, this is, I think, what they are doing, and then coin a way for me to understand what's happening.
Yeah, no, it is so interesting with that. And because I do think that the entrepreneur thing is just so critical for anybody who wants to ultimately, especially continue to climb up the ladder. I mean, you could hit, there's some roles and they could pay very well still where you are in that independent contributor category that may not hit that. But I even still find that a lot of those ICs who may not want to manage people who still think entrepreneurial. I mean, and in some ways, a lot of engineering roles you have to by the nature of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it, or product or any of those sort of related fields. So what would you say, I know you speak a lot about the importance of soft skills, which 100% with you, and especially with the increase of AI these days, that's allowing you to actually do a lot of other things that you still don't get away from needing strong soft skills from. So what would you highlight as, the key soft skills that you think are important that individuals have, and especially when it comes to trying to advance their careers?
At the risk of using two analogies and two different stories,
It is.
I liken soft skills as playing poker. Your technical skills are your buy-in to have a seat at the table. Your technical skills are probably the big bet and the small bet. But how you play the hand with all the players that are in the system, whether they are human or not human, is basically your soft skills. So it's equally important, if not more, I've realized in a career. Now, how I define or how I try to explain the soft skill somebody needs to become a top performer is by using what I call cardinal points of promotion. So just like there are cardinal points of direction, north, south, east, west, there are cardinal points of promotion, which are people skills, communication skills, mindset skills, and entrepreneurial skills. We've already talked about entrepreneurial, but the other three are equally important. So basically, I say if you want to chart your career, you need to walk in these four paths. However, some are strengths, so you need to walk only a little bit in the south direction. Some are weaknesses, so you need to walk a lot more in the north direction. Whatever the case may be, once you are able to bring your manager on board with this type of thinking and asking him directly, here are the 4 areas or 4 directions I'm trying to improve in. Can you rate me on these 4 directions? And then I'll work on one action item that will help me walk one step in each direction. That's a great way to kind of formalize a way and make sense of this esoteric thing about getting promoted, or even if you want to be in an IC role, become a leader that you are able to manage multiple projects.
When you say that, it actually makes me visualize the, you familiar with the DISC framework or any of those other ones where you see where people fall as far as, their abilities? And you can see then, if somebody finds, it's hard for me this way, but somebody maybe will find a visual and do it. But if somebody is completely cratering in this area, then that's probably going to hold them back unless somehow in that organization that isn't, emphasized. And that's something that we talk about, back to what you said as a game, is, each company and especially each department ends up having their own unique promotion criteria. But I, again, think it does come back to really the way that you broke that out. I love it. Would you just mention those again, and what you called your framework?
Yeah, cardinal points of promotion. So imagine a compass. I say the north is people skills because I feel that's the most important. Then you have communication skills, mindset skills, and entrepreneurial skills.
It's great. I love it. I'll say, as I've, whenever I write about mindset, sometimes I'm always a little hesitant, or in my program that I'm working on now, the first module is around mindset because I feel like it's the foundation. But I also feel like it's often the thing that people it's so unsexy and people are so, not interested in it, but it is so critical. And especially because the mindset is going to be what enables I think all of those other areas, or at least enable the mentality to be willing to do it, even while it's still a standalone. It's like ultimately, you could talk about a mindset. That's the entrepreneurial mindset. You can talk about the mindset, or when it comes to self-awareness and emotional intelligence, that's going to enable the people and the communication component to it. So, but it is one area where I had to talk myself. I kept being like, well, maybe I shouldn't have put that module first, because then people are going to just be like, oh, great, boring. But I think if people are facing that, they're already in their own way probably, and that's actually what's probably holding them back in their careers, entrepreneurship, whatever they want to do.
I agree. And I would also kind of reframe a little bit by saying, if they chose to invest in whatever you're teaching, they are coming into this program with a particular mindset, with a internal locus of control, knowing that, okay, I can make things happen. If they are coming into it, they might be ready for mindset right away. But yes, I do tend to agree with you to the point that you have to give people what they need, or what they want, and then give them what they need.
Right. I think about it with, going back to Ramit, one of his programs, and actually an area where art and plays a little bit in helping people develop their side hustles, is that there was, or entrepreneur endeavors in general, but there was this, he started one of his programs with, okay, let's go through the idea phase, because that's the exciting, fun part that people love. And, doing that first, then sometimes can bring the extra motivation you need to now step into the next state and be like, yeah, because now you have a little bit of a North Star about what you're trying to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm curious.
I always think of it in the term of like movies and storytelling. It's like, how do you get them in and excited for it, and then you give them the backstory later.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes that is what's necessary. Yeah.
And I think that's something I have to get much better at, because every time I speak about the cardinal points of promotion, I think it hits well to everybody. It kind of sits well to whoever is experienced. But when you are starting out in your career, or even the first decade, if you're not really optimizing for it, you're like, do I really need this? So I'm trying to bridge that gap. I'm trying to make sure I figure out what I need to, what they want first, to then trying to give them this framework, because I'll be completely honest, I'm still trying to get better at that.
Completely hear you. And I think the nature of even changing buyer needs, changing job market, we're always going to be evolving on that sort of thing. It's that beginner's mindset. That said, I'm curious, do you have anything right now where people can go through and do an assessment, like where they actually get a score back related to your cardinal?
That's a great idea, and something I'm looking to implement on the list, but not there yet. But a quiz like that, like an assessment quiz, can really open somebody's eyes to, okay, where they are falling short, or even open their eyes to some of the strengths that they have that they haven't been played on lately.
100%. I think that would be great. I've been trying to figure out or thought about something similar, where, people get an assessment back afterwards that says, based on these things, these are likely where you're having your weaknesses. Here's a quick set of tips on how you can bridge those. But I think when I hear yours, and what I, again, keep thinking of is, I can tell you how many times when we were at Disney, we would go through these different, be it team building, be it HR pointed things, where, again, a thing like the DISC framework or the Myers-Briggs framework or these others where people are figuring out more about themselves. But through those things, it's then how do you interact more with some of the others there. But by seeing that, it helps people better prescribe, I guess you could say, what they actually need to be working on. Because I think that's a challenge a lot of people have, is there's this interesting stat that from Business Week about how 90% of people feel that they're top performers, managers, and executives, it's nearly 97%. And when the reality is 10% is kind to say are the top performers in an organization, or at least the ones who get the perks like that, and some people would argue it's even lower. You want to be in the top 1% or whatever it is. But the idea there is that most people are so blind that they don't see it. So I really think, something like that, because you've got such a really cool framework there, be really useful and valuable. But anyway, I digress.
No, that's great. I love this.
One of the things, as you do mention the soft skills, I'm curious, what's your thoughts on like school and education, because you mentioned something earlier too, that I very much also agree with when it comes to, what you were describing with Compass and other things. It's like, you come into your career and suddenly it's like, my belief is school doesn't prepare you a whole lot for actually how you navigate in it. And even those soft skills you just mentioned, well, the soft skills aren't really taught. Some people will be like, well, you learn, it's like we homeschool, by the way. And people are like, well, how are your kids going to learn that? And I'm like, trust me, my kids are learning just fine. It's not like, they're hermits, don't ever talk to human beings. So when people say also in school, that's where you get those, but they're often not directed very well, or people aren't understanding the concepts of what it actually means, things that maybe later on in life people learn from books like How to Win Friends and Influence People and other things like that. But what's your take on school and how well it prepares you for the workplace?
When you talk about school, most of my background is from India, being in the insanely competitive field in Mumbai, where getting into the top colleges, getting into like your school's sports team, the first team or whatever you call it, is so insanely competitive that in my adult life, it was very difficult for me to compliment anybody without feeling like I'm giving some of my edge away. It was still that level where I was playing the zero-sum game, that is being played in school, because it's just so intensely competitive back home that you tend to feel like the world is like that as well. Whereas the world is a positive sum game, where if you help somebody else, or if you compliment somebody genuinely, or whatever the case may be, you're building that relationship. And in the workplace, most of the decisions that are being made about our careers are being made in rooms where we are not present. So if I continue to be competitive in this environment, which is a positive sum game, I'm not going to go further ahead. So that's one big thing that I had to unlearn, kind of that we are not playing a zero-sum game. And what I also had to unlearn was the component mindset. I think all our ancestors were tradespeople and entrepreneurs. Then came the industrial age, where everybody wanted workers to work in a systematic fashion. This is something I first heard from Seth Godin, and he talks about the industrial age, and now it's a new age, where my entire schooling was being told to fit fit as a component in a big machine, which is this corporate machine, where you just have to get a specialized skill and do that job. Whereas that's not the landscape right now. You cannot have a component mindset. If you need to be a leader, you need to be one big machine in the system. You need to be the engine, not the one screw in the engine that can fall off and can be easily replaceable. Or even sometimes it falls off, and then the engine just keeps running. So that's another one that I would highlight.
Yeah. Or when it falls off, the other pieces have to take on more of the load.
Yeah. The stress gets distributed in the other bolts.
I think I did watch the same Seth Godin thing you're referencing, or read some of the books, whatever it is. And that completely stuck with me. And I agree as well. And it's part of the driver, again, for us of why we're homeschooling and how we're trying to look at that a little bit differently. But it is fascinating. And I think right now, again, with AI, with just the changes in, again, work and it's so interesting now. It's like with, as companies, many of them are like, it's time to come back to the office. And a lot of people are like, sorry. And I'm still going to be so curious how it all nets out, because it's like, okay, people need jobs. They need this. But it is this fascinating thing. And I'm wondering whether or not we're shifting back more to that human spirit that, like, embedded in us from all of those years, feels like it needs to reach for the entrepreneurial side. And I think it's that outlet, that creative outlet that so many people want, but a lot of people don't unlock. And I think that is a critical piece of it. I was joking the other day, don't worry, I'm not really putting my kids completely to work, as I say here, but I'm like, in the old days too, there's the farm. And even a farm in its own right was an entrepreneur sort of thing this is it. This is how they cared for it. This was just them, their business, And now I'm talking about it with my kids instead. I'm like, okay, sure, we may have some chickens out here in a small garden, but ultimately I'm trying to build a content farm with my kids. You know, I'm like, how do you get them thinking about things like, because they want their own YouTube channels. So it's today's modern farm, maybe, is we'll all have our content farms. Yeah.
I think what happened during COVID too is not everybody, but a lot of people remembered that humans are builders. And when you're not building, you don't feel progression and happiness. And COVID forced people to
Reflect.
build because maybe they were furloughed or whatever they were happening. And now it's like, hell no, I'm not going back to that. I'm a builder. I'm a creative machine. You're not going to just put me in a cube anymore.
And also we play more roles, or we used to play more roles in the same ecosystem than we are now. With the big organizations, you're so pigeonholed that if we take the farming analogy, all you're essentially doing every day is just put seed, or you're just told to only put seeds. You cannot do anything else. Cannot run the harvester, cannot do anything else. You just have to put seeds in the right way, which kind of takes away a lot of the meaning, and also comes back to me creating or being able to be lucky to get into this dream job where I can play more hats. That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
I'm willing to sacrifice on not being at least in the cutting edge of whatever the automotive technology is, or have the highest amount of income that you can in the industry. I've been able to kind of understand where my happy place is.
What you said reminded me of that old Charlie Chaplin short where he's in the assembly line and all he does is put a bolt, and when he leaves, he's still doing this because he's great in them.
Yeah. No, I everything you said, yeah, that absolutely resonates. And I have this fear for me internally of being just a cog in an assembly line. And it's why, even back to it, when you say somebody has this particular role, you know, I try to be conscientious at times that, hey, maybe there are some people who are like, I like this, but I struggle to think about how they can, really enjoy that piece. And maybe for a moment you can, because until you get mastery over it. And then you're looking for the next thing to have mastery. And Tony Robbins talks a lot about the idea that the key to happiness for individuals is progress. And if you're not feeling progress, and I think that's why a lot of people get stuck and have this feeling in their careers, because they're just not feeling progress anymore. The key is how, as long as you got to have enough either pain or pleasure to move, forward and get yourself out of that rut. And often in the careers, it's the pain, but sometimes people don't even take that move until somebody makes a move for them and lays them off for something else, because they started just kind of like passively showing up in that job. The term quiet quitting, Art and I debate at times, because there's a couple different ways to look at that term. On one hand, employers are getting what they're probably getting because they're not engaging those team members. And on the other hand, that team member may just be like, okay, I'm going to put only this much in. Whereas Art and I, we were the individuals. Look, I mean, I wouldn't ever say we quiet quit, but we sure managed to do what we needed to also engage with our side hustles. And that side hustle side of it helped to fill that gap a little bit about what we weren't being fulfilled from the work basis. And I think this is why more and more people have those. It just turns out that if you do them well enough and you're consistent enough, those side hustles can become the main hustle eventually, which I think is why so much of what you teach and what we look at fits together, because you can't help it. When somebody is striving to be this top performer and to learn that again, I keep forgetting the name of your framework. Say it again.
Cardinal points.
Those are all translatable to entrepreneurship as well. And like, that's really what it is. And in some ways, I think this is how Art and I think, and I'm sure this is how you think to this degree. Look, maybe not everybody wants to become an entrepreneur, but man, like, we're all striving to arm them with the skills so that if they choose, they have the option, so that they're not pigeonholed. They now, minds are opened up, and they realize that what might have been, something they feared before, the idea of, if I do it on my own, there's risk. Well, look, there's risk every day also in, renting your paycheck by going in, day to day and not having any ownership to it. So those things, keep me like thinking, no, but let's just make sure you have options. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you, but don't get yourself stuck where you have no options, because that can be dangerous. Just like when people wait to network until after they need the job. And it's like, no, just 10 minutes a week up to that point would have meant that, you were in a position to then be able to land, pretty much probably whatever job you wanted out there because you had already kept all these individuals waiting for the opportunity to work.
Yeah, it reminds me of astronomy, right? People who have the luxury of time are able to kind of look up and see the stars.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just in your job, in your life the entire day. So one time you see the stars, you probably fall in love with and you want to see more. So I think that trigger, that catalyst comes in everybody's life at different points.
I love it. I also just visualized a future LinkedIn post from you where you just have a picture of the stars and then you go into the explanation of it.
I am a lot more philosophical than I write, but I don't know if I should add more of that because I'm like, okay, who's this board guru talking about? In a conversation, it can come naturally and people are like, okay, I understand that. But in a post, I probably need to learn how to weave that in organically.
You won't know until you try.
It's true. Who's that individual? I forget his name. There's somebody out there who does a really good job of it now, and he's making really good videos on it. It's not Dan, is it? No. I'm trying to remember his name, but he gets into it like deep all the time. He shows up on LinkedIn every day, but he's mainly on YouTube. But I'm failing now by not providing a name, so maybe this is where we're going to have to add an on-screen text art and where we just have it pop up afterwards and be like, it's this person. All right. So, as we, I want to make sure, I know you've been working actually on this launch of your program. I know when I say launch, I know you've also been already helping people along the way and you've had iterations of, but now you're moving into this cohort sort of phase of how you're going to approach this. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that so that our audience can consider if something like that is actually valuable for them as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned early on that my LinkedIn content is doing well, and a big chunk of that are people who are looking to find jobs. They are either international students hoping to land their first US full-time job, or immigrant professionals who are trying to job switch and get closer to their dream jobs. So I just created a poll the other day asking, hey, which job search cohort course should I launch first? And you'll be surprised to hear that the breakdown was 54% and 46%, which was like interesting because it was so close. But it goes to show that probably there are enough people in each category that want support to kind of get to closer to what they really want to do. And that's, I think, the genesis of the next two cohorts. So the first cohort coming in October is going to be helping students land their first US full-time job. And then another cohort in November helping immigrant professionals switch their jobs. So that's the upcoming two cohorts.
Awesome. And if anybody wants to learn more from you, follow you, where's the best place for them to do that?
The best place is, if you want to follow daily content, I don't know if you want to do that. I enjoy putting posts daily and I make it as valuable as I can. And I've been encouraged by people like you, Mike and Artin, to kind of continue to do that and say that that's good. So daily content on LinkedIn, Varun Negandhi is the place that you can find me. You can also go to beyondgrad.com and I'll share specific links with you later where they can go and look at my job search cheat code, which had 14,000 likes across like 4 posts and it blew up. So there are links that I can share that you can put in the show notes. Beyondgrad.com is also a great place to go.
Perfect. Okay, we will link to all of those things, and then I will say, even though some people are like, "Whoa, daily post," what you're posting is just, again, so amazing and fantastic, and you're doing a couple of things for individuals there, and I've taken note as I've considered something similar, but you're doing it so amazing that I'm like, I'm not even needed out there. You're compiling oftentimes some of the best tools and resources out there, so I think it's really beneficial for individuals if they're like, "Oh, I don't know, I get so many different notifications." It's like, okay, then focus on your content. I really think is a way for them to go, especially in these specific areas that we've said, because you're doing some of the extra lifting for them by bringing them the best resources, and not just biased towards your own. Although, as we've heard about a few of these, those are excellent as well. But you're also making sure you highlight others, because, well, I mean, let's face it. Anyway, everything that we create and try to do, it's basically through all of the learnings that we've done through time. And that just correlates into what we're creating. So again, I can't speak highly enough of your the content and what you're creating out there. We'll link to all of those different resources that we have here. One final question for you that I didn't even prepare you for, but I'm just always curious about this, seeing that Art and I come from the media industry. Do you have a favorite movie or two?
Oh, this might be probably one of the questions that I tell you to edit out or change.
No worries. Do you not watch too many?
No, I watch movies. I'm trying to think of a movie that we might have watched, all of us might have watched, but there are many Bollywood movies that I can name. I'm a big fan of Bollywood movies too. There's a movie called Three Idiots that I think everybody should watch, whether they know Hindi or not. It's about an engineering student or three engineering students having different passions. So that one was very interesting. There's a movie called Dil Chahta Hai, which is also another Bollywood movie, which is about three friends in Mumbai living their lives. So I could very relate to that. It's a cool, wide kind of a movie. But give me a second to think about an English movie, because I've seen many, to kind of know, okay, which one is my
I just recently watched, was it RRR? I think is what it was called. Yeah. I love that movie, man. Amazing. And the way it was shot, for me, for whatever reason it is, American content, I watch plenty of, enjoy that. But basically Indian and Korean content, like those are ones where I'm like, I don't care if it's, not English. Obviously dubs are better and better these days, but I'm like, there's just something compelling about actors in those, particular countries that just, I don't know, it just brings me into the screen. I love it.
Yeah. Another Hindi movie which is very popular is called Swades. It's basically about a NASA engineer who goes back home or goes to India, kind of is with his family, and he comes back and he's just not fitting back into NASA, and he's reminiscing of his time back in India. And it has so beautiful songs that if I listen to like one particular song, if I listen to it where somebody else is playing it, if I walk into that door, it kind of pulls on my heartstrings, and I'm like, please stop that. I don't want to miss going back to my country. That movie is also amazing.
Well, I'm intrigued on that. I have to find that song too. I always love putting on certain music that just takes me into a certain space. Let me ask you this: what about two books that you would recommend for anybody who you are trying to help grow that more entrepreneurial mindset?
The first book I would recommend is Feel Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It's a very digestible book. It's like a square book. It's interesting. And it talks about how the best creators of this world, be it Picasso or Steve Jobs or Conan O'Brien and all these late night co-hosts, they all stole from each other in a quite inspirational way. Why did the Renaissance happen when it happened and everybody just blew up? It was because they were part of what he calls a genius. Nobody was a genius. They were just part of a scene. So it's a genius that they were part of. They all learned from each other. And I use that daily. So if you see my posts, yes, there are some things, some IPs that I come up with, like the RARE framework or the Cardinal Points framework, but they are all on the shoulders of giants that have come before me, that I've read, have influenced me. So that was a great book to help me suspend the pressure of being original, which is what we are all trying to do or told to do. You have to be original, and it can be so overwhelming. It helped me suspend my belief to see the best people in the world are learning from others. And there's a bad theft and there's a good theft. There's plagiarism and there's inspiration. And what's the difference between the two, and how you can use that. So that's one book I'll recommend.
Well, appreciate it. We're glad we had you. If you come up with that other movie later, again, the brilliance of this, we could pop up that text on screen. And
I'm bummed. I'm bummed that I can't. I'm drawing a blank. Obviously, my mind goes to Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. But I want to go. There's some sports movies. I love D2 The Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
I love the Denzel movie about
Remember the Titans. Yeah.
So all those movies I love, but if there's a movie that I can watch again and again, I'm drawing a blank on that.
No worries. In our family, Jurassic Park always comes up as the over and over one. It'll be interesting to see as your kids get older what becomes the popular, shows.
I have 2 daughters, so I've already watched Moana, Frozen 1, Frozen 2.
Yeah.
When Frozen 3 is going to come out, I'm going to... Yeah. I mean, I love to complain, but all those movies are great. I haven't been watching it with my kids. It's fun to complain, but Disney knows how to make movies. Yeah. And nobody other than you two would know more about that.
No, it's pretty impressive. Well, you need your Girl Dad shirt. Do you have one of those yet?
No, but I need to. I actually had at one point started an Instagram channel called Girl Dad, but then my wife shut it down quickly, saying, "I'm not letting you upload any images of my kids," which I think she was smart to do that. So, other than that, it's fun. It's fun being a girl dad. For a bald guy, I know how to braid somebody's hair, so I count that as an achievement.
That's awesome. I'm 3 boys, so I know nothing about dad, but that's awesome. The braiding aspect of it. So, well, great, man. Thank you so much for being a guest, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot about you, a lot more in the future. And again, looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for validating me by bringing me on your podcast. You two are amazing resources for anybody who wants to learn how to grow in their careers and also on the side as an entrepreneur. And I think one amazing benefit I get from talking to you guys and hearing you talk about what I'm bringing to the table is that it gives me patience, and it tells me it's all about time now. Just continue to keep going, because sometimes I get nervous. Am I hitting my goals? Am I not hitting my goals? Should I continue to do this? Should I not? But I think conversations like these are very encouraging to let me say, okay, it's just about time now. Just keep on going.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. And just for everybody else too, don't forget to subscribe and follow and share this with others.